Hey, welcome to this conversation we're going to have with a good friend of mine, John Mylant. He's an expert. I'm not going to coin any terms. I'm not going to say any terms because I just want to make sure I'm not making a mistake. He is a perfectionist, so we want to make sure that I stay within guidelines. John, you're going to tell us everything about it, but the first thing I want to do is introduce you. You're John Mylant, a good friend of mine, and we're going to have a conversation about some of the things that you've done in your life personally and to help others. Uh,
Sure.
so please introduce yourself. Welcome. Let's talk.
Well, my name is John Mylant. I live in beautiful Colorado Springs, Colorado. And we're going to talk today about an experience in my life that really led me to develop the product that we're going to talk about today.
Okay. When you say a product, what are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is something, it's called Redesign Your Life. It was developed out of me searching for not only meaning, but trying to figure out how to succeed in life in general. And because of these experiences that I went through, I ended up developing a routine and a system for myself in life that literally brought me to where I wanted to be. And then I talked to lots of people about it, and other people were asking me, well, can you teach me to do that stuff? And because of that, I designed this concept and just called it Redesign Your Life, because that's literally what I did for myself.
Okay. So before we dive into that mindset and the area that you discovered, why don't you tell us more about yourself? We want to get to know you, where you were born, and your a little bit of your transition in life to that got you to this point.
Sure. Okay. So I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, little city called Willowick, eastern suburb on Lake Erie, and grew up with a big family. There were seven of us back then at that time. Graduated from high school, went off to college. After college, I went off to seminary and got my master's degree and worked for a few years all around the country, from Kentucky to New Orleans. When I was in New Orleans, I really wanted to live by the ocean and live by the mountains. So in New Orleans, I was by the oceans. And before I settled down, because I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old then. So I wanted to move to the mountains. So I moved to Colorado Springs and just fell in love in the mountains. And that's really where we raised our family.
Okay.
And as time progressed, being there, I started to work for myself, and always seemed to fall short of where I really wanted to go. I would start stuff, I would develop it, and it would start to work, but this little voice inside kept telling me, you really need to get back into your lane. You're not good enough to do this stuff. And I really had a lot of self-doubt in my abilities. You know what? You know what's funny though? Nobody else did. Everybody else would tell me, it's like, wow, you're so talented. I can't wait to see what you do in life. And I honestly could not comprehend what they were telling me. Because I didn't believe I could excel to the levels where my heart's desire really was. I would start, and things would start going well, but then at a certain point, I started to go, wow, I probably really can't do this as good as other people. And that's when I would regress and jump onto something else. So I would start something and it would never finish. And I would keep jumping to the next thing, like maybe the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. And this whole process through my life led me to start searching for answers. And we'll get into the discussion on that, I guess. But a lot of traveling and a lot of question asking and coming back home. Over a period of time, I literally found my answers through a number of different sources. that led me to develop this system for myself.
From what I
That
understand, sorry for interrupting. From what I understand, this whole concept came about from personal crisis. What can you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, there was a time in my life where I really was fed up. I said, listen, I know in my heart all these things that I want to do and that I'm capable of. I just know inside. It was me on the inside that no one else knew. That inner me, I guess. I said, I have all these abilities and all these talents, and I know I can go to this certain level. But I was always falling short of that because I really doubted myself. But it was even more than that. I wanted to find my place in this world. I wanted to figure out, how do you get inner peace? How do you find purpose? And I asked these questions. I read lots of books, tried religion, tried all sorts of stuff, and even traveled. I mean, I thought, one day, and this is where it'll pick up, I was sitting I went to Jamaica. And in Jamaica, I went there for a while, and I was working in an orphanage for AIDS kids in Spanish Town, which is just outside of Kingston, Jamaica. And while I was sitting there working with the kids, this inner voice inside me said, "This ain't it." And that, because I said, maybe if I give myself, like Mother Teresa, give myself and help and do this and do that. And that inner voice said, this is not it. You're not going to find it here. And I finally, I finally came back home. And this is what's funny. So I was watching a Tony Robbins video on YouTube one day. And and this is where everything began for me. And he was in a conference with all these people. And there was this young gentleman that he was working with. He stood up, and this guy was depressed. And he said, listen, on a scale of 1 to 10, what are you depressed at right now? And the guy's just kind of standing, goes, I'm at about an 8. And Tony goes, okay, everybody watch this. So he goes, all right, listen, here's what I want you to do. I want you to imagine the greatest orgasm you ever had in your life. Can you do that for me? And the guy goes, yeah, okay, I'll do it. So Tony goes, go ahead and now start thinking of this thing. So this kid started to think of this thing, and it's funny, his shoulders kind of stood up a little bit, and he started to smile. And Tony goes, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1, you're not depressed at all. 10, you're ready to leave this world. Where are you? And the guy says, I'm at about a 3. Huh. And Tony goes, okay, so here's what I want you to do now. Forget that picture in your mind anymore. I want you to imagine the most depressed you've ever been. So he starts imagining this, and you see him get back into his slumping shoulders. And Tony goes, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you right now? And he goes, oh, I'm at about a 9. And then Tony stops, and he looks at the audience. He says, I want you guys to understand this, that this young man came in depressed, but I just showed you right now that depression didn't control him. He made choices, instant choices, to be more depressed or less depressed in seconds. And Tony said, don't chase your life. Don't chase things. It's not a destiny. It's a choice. And it's like, boom, the lights just went on inside my head. And that was the beginning of everything, because I suddenly realized for years I've been looking. I've been pursuing something that's always been here with me. And I realized at that point everything is not a destiny that I have to pursue to find to be able to exist in a certain state. It's a choice that I make instantly right now. And at that moment I stopped and I said, I'm going to be happy and I'm going to be at peace. And from that point on, I stopped chasing. And that was the beginning of me learning how to develop the habits and the routines that I needed to understand how to really consciously control the way I think and the things that I do, instead of just letting my subconscious mind do it all the time. And that is literally the beginning of what started to change my life completely.
That sounds like a path that was destined to happen. I love that story.
It was amazing.
It's amazing. Aha moment, right? That's one of those things.
Yep.
So this is basically learning how to get in touch with your inner self. Why is that important?
Yeah. Well, if I could, let me personify the inner voice for a second.
Right.
Let me call it the inner John. Okay. My name's John, inner John. My outer John is just me, who I see in a mirror, my conscious. My inner John is my subconscious, my brain. And here's what I have learned. My inner John, his whole purpose is to keep me safe. I've built this world around me. We've all built this world around us. And, his job is to keep me safe and continue to support me and tell me, all these good things that are going on and support my beliefs. It's neither right nor wrong. This is just his job. And he keeps telling me I'm doing a good job, and I built a great world for myself. And then what he does is he filters out all what I'll call the clutter. We have, billions of pieces of information bombarding us on a daily basis. And what he does is he filters out all that garbage that has nothing to do with our lives, so we're just not bombarded by everything, and really only lets us see the things that are important to us. Mm-hmm. A good example of that would be, you ever bought a new car? Most people have, or a new used car, where one day you don't see it, and then you buy one, you start driving it, and suddenly you start seeing it everywhere on the street. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry?
Or a certain color.
Yeah, or a certain color. Now, there's a study being done on this. This is called the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon. And what it is you suddenly start noticing something. There's no increase there, but what was always there you didn't see before, but you see now. And this is the job of my inner John and everybody's inner self, is to take out the clutter. So one day that car wasn't there. I mean, I couldn't see it even though it was all around me, right, because my inner self was just, had those blinders up and considered it clutter. And then when I bought that car and it became part of my life, all of a
sudden,
yeah, now I could see it everywhere, but it was always there. And that is an impact that is going to literally change my life when I realize that we'll get into more on the discussion on that and how powerful it is and how it is massively life changing.
Yeah, there's an exercise actually that Tony Robbins does where he asks people to stand up and he tells people, I want you to record in your memory anything red that you can see.
Oh, that's right.
As they turn around, right, they come to a halt, facing Tony Robbins, and he says, okay. Now I want you to close your eyes. Remember this. Now open your eyes and tell me how. Now remember, he said, remember every red thing that you saw. And then when he confronts him with the memory, he says, now tell me every brown thing that you can remember. And nobody remembers anything brown because they were looking out for the red. And then he asked him. He asked the audience to go around once again and come back with everything brown that they perceived, and then boom, there's like all of a sudden 10 things that they can remember. So I completely understand. I've seen that before, so that's great. So this is really about learning how to communicate with your inner voice. Is that what it is?
Yeah, pretty much so. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But there's a little bit more to it than that. And honestly, this is where the problem lies for most people. This is where the problem lies for me. And this is why most of us end up failing. This is why most of us end up being inconsistent. Think about if I say, hey, let's dream about some stuff. And you start dreaming about things that you'd like to do in your life in the future, or places you'd like to go, things you'd like to have. Well, let's look at this logically for a second. We live in this world. And the world that we live in now, our little world, our inner self is there protecting us. And then we have dreams that are outside of this world.
Right.
right? Anything that is outside of this world, our inner selves considers a threat and really does not want us to get involved in it because it's outside of our world. And we have a great place, where we live now. We're in control of it. We're familiar with it. Out there somewhere, we don't know what it's like. There's a lot of risk. We're not familiar with it. We're not in control of it. So inner self says, that's not a good idea. So he's there to protect us. It's not like he's against us.
Right.
But his protection is, and all he knows is this is the world we live in. So let's stay in this world.
So it does what it's meant to be to do.
Yes,
right?
literally.
Right.
And most people don't understand this on a conscious level, and this is where we struggle. We're familiar with these struggles. Think about it sometimes. Your inner voice says stuff like this to you. It says, hey, listen, are you sure you want to do that? There's a lot of risk. What would happen if you fail? You sure you want to risk that kind of money? What happens if it doesn't work? How are you going to handle that? What about your bills? How are you going to pay your bills if you try to do that? You've never done that. How are you going to get that done? You don't have a clue how you're going to get that done. How can you even try stuff like that? We hear all these inner voices in our conscious. Everybody can relate to this. And it's our inner self, again, not trying to discourage us as much as just protect us. And saying, he's telling us this stuff to say, hey, you know what? Get back in your lane.
That leads me to a question.
Sure.
Human beings turn to blame everything outside ourselves to excuse the reasons why we can make changes. So when we talk about, when we detach ourselves from the inner self, how do we make it a purpose to understand that it's still our faults, even though we are divided into two beings? How do you play that game? Because some people are going to take advantage of that concept and say, well, it's not my fault, it's my inner self, right?
Sure.
How would you advise people not to fall into that mistake, if you will?
Sure. Well, let's and here's what happens. Let's walk through that process and literally what's happening. And I'll use myself as an example. So let's say that I want to try something different in my life. I want to become a real estate agent. Okay, and inner self immediately says, what is wrong with you, outer John? Are you crazy? You don't know how to do that. No, he's gonna say all these things to me to try to get me to stay where I am in my lane because he really cares. He wants to protect me.
Right.
And he's gonna ask me these questions. He's gonna say, how are you gonna pay your bills? Most of these people don't even make money for the first 4 to 6 months. What are you going to do to pay your bills? You don't have all that money set aside. How are you going to go into real estate? You don't know how to do it. Look at all this risk. What happens? You have kids. What happens if you don't make it? How are you going to pay your house bills? How are you going to feed your kids? And he's asking me all these questions to get me to start thinking about it. And I keep trying to do all this stuff. And it doesn't work. And the reason it's not working is because he's not on board with this yet.
Right.
And then because of this conflict we have, I'm starting thinking it's like, yeah, this marketing plan didn't work either. This one didn't work. And inner John says, yeah, try another one. It probably won't work either, but go ahead and try it. None of these things are working, but it's probably not your fault. Because you're a good person, John. It's probably because there's too many agents out there right now, or the market's changing, or this just isn't for you. You don't have the right personality. And then I go, yeah, that's right. But it's natural for us to blame something else when you think about it, because all we're doing is we're starting to agree with our inner self. Hey, listen, John, it wasn't your fault. Don't worry about it. It's because there's too many agents in the market right now, and everybody already knows somebody, so it's really impossible for you to get business. And I start going, yeah, that's probably right. I would be really good at this if there just weren't so many agents.
Right.
But, so that's what happens, and we start to agree within ourselves, and to make us.
Can the opposite happen? where the inner self is trying to push you, and you resist. Your outer self is the one resisting from something that's convenient, something that's going to benefit you down the line. Is that a possibility, or is always the inner self the one protecting you from everything unknown? How does that
No,
work?
not at all. What you're saying is absolutely true.
Okay.
So when you want to pursue something and your inner self is on board with that, inner self will do the complete opposite. And this has happened to me. You may hear this, like, you ever hear these epiphanies or aha moments
Right.
or something like that? Let me give you an example. One was once I was working with this young lady who was teaching me about social media, and she just talked away 10,000 miles an hour. And I could not get a word in. And you know how sometimes you look for a place to get a word in? I mean, I wondered if she was an alien, because I wondered if she even breathed. She's just talking away because she thinks out loud. She's talking real fast. And I developed this attitude of, once she started talking, it's like I would zone out somewhere else because I couldn't get a word in. It's like, here she goes again. And one day my inner self kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, John, you got an attitude here. We need to learn from her, so you need to figure out how to learn from her. You can't sit here with this attitude because she knows what she's talking about, and we've got to change this. So your inner self will guide you where you want to go when you're literally not going there, or may give you an epiphany, or may give you an aha moment. You ever read a book?
It sounds like, and that was my next question. It sounds like inner self, outer self, they're always bumping one against the other. Is
Possibly, yes.
Okay.
Sometimes.
So is
quite often?
Is that there for a reason? Is creation or evolution, whatever your perspective is, is this something that was meant to be for that conflict? Is that some defense mechanism? What's going on? Why do we have so much conflict with inner self?
The conflict doesn't have to be as big as it is.
All right.
Most people fail because they don't understand this conflict that is going on. Okay, think about it for a second. If I have a dream that I want to pursue and my inner self isn't on board with it, what's going to happen? He's going to put up those blinders, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to pursue something way out in the world that my inner self is not on board with. And what happens? Here's what I can't see. Because it may be right in front of me, but because the blinders are up, I can't see opportunities. I can't see resources. I can't see networking I need to do. I can't see the business that may be right in front of me. And I can't understand some of the concepts or things that I've taught. How many times have you seen people go to seminars and webinars, kick-ass training? They come home, get all excited, and within a couple of weeks, they're back to their old self, even though they were taught how to make $1 million.
Right.
Yet they're not doing it because they have the head knowledge. They could pass a test, even tell someone else about it, but they don't have that living revelation or that heart knowledge that they need to make it come to life, because inner self is not on board with it. So they're out there doing all sorts of stuff blindly, throwing spaghetti against every wall they can find to figure out where it's going to stick, and trying all this stuff. But inner self is just kicked back going, yeah, it didn't work this time, did it? Go ahead, try something else. Maybe that'll work. And we don't know where we're going and what we're doing. And I describe it as, you know what, you can succeed, but you're going to work 3 times as hard. It's going to take you 3 times as long. You're going to expound a lot more energy, and another area of your life is going to be sacrificed because of it, because you're not on board with your inner self. And most people do not understand this. That's the problem. But let's think of it another way. Let's think of it, now I understand this, but I still have conflict. And I liken it to an airplane where you have an autopilot. We are just human. We're not perfect. So I'm never what I call being in sync. I'm never perfectly in sync with myself. It's kind of like an autopilot on an airplane. An autopilot, I've read, like 97% of the time is always auto-correcting, and the plane is kind of going like this back and forth, and where it's supposed to, but it's never perfectly straight.
Right.
And we are the same way. We can get in sync, but we're never going to be perfect where we're in perfect harmony with ourselves all the time. There's always on a weekly basis little areas where I discover that I need to slow down a little bit.
Okay. Uh, do you do you see that most people, uh, when they get emotional, what precedes what? The emotions or the thought process? In that,
Sure.
e- even when they're going through the educational process, and even when they understand, what's most uh, important to the mind to listen to? Is it the emotion or the critical thinking? What do you think is the most important?
Let me think about that for 1 second. So let's talk about some emotions. When we're not in sync with ourselves, when inner John is not working with outer John, here's what we work in. There's 5 things I describe. Often by the work we do, we get overwhelmed. Just we feel too much is upon us sometimes. Sometimes we have fear of things. Sometimes we have self-doubt.
Right.
Sometimes we have anxiety. Sometimes we have stress. Sometimes we have confusion.
Hmm.
And these are emotions that come to us not so much from the way we thought as much as we're not in, we don't know where we're going or what we're doing. We have no answers. We're just doing.
Right.
And because we're not getting where we want to, like we want to, we have this dream and it's just not working. We're stressing.
Okay.
And when that stuff happens, I teach people, I say, don't be afraid of it. When you stress, don't go to the gym to just work it off, because what's going to happen is the stress is going to come back. All you're going to do is go to the gym and let some stress out. But that stress will come back unless you address what's causing the stress. And what's causing those things is at that moment, you're not in tune with inner self. And so what I teach people, I have a slogan. It's called slow down to get there faster.
Right.
When you feel stress or anxiety or overwhelmed or something like that, that's just a sign that inner self is not quite on board with what's going on, and you need to take a couple steps back and take a look at the things that are causing this. Once you take a look at them, then inner self is on board, and you'll feel that go away, and you'll start pursuing forward. And this happens to me on a weekly basis. Just little things here or there could make you feel overwhelmed or cause a little anxiety when you're thinking about it. So I've learned, I said, okay, let's slow down a little bit here.
Okay.
And so I actually embrace those things now because they're signs for me to slow down. They're not things there's not things I've always thought were bad anymore. It's like, okay, I can handle this. Let's just slow down a little bit and figure out why this is here.
Sounds like you answered the question I had for you, which is, you use the term in sync to connect to our inner self, and that was going to be my next question, which you just answered. So, one of the things I always think about when I think about what type of people benefit from this, from any type of change, any type of external um, element to help us change, is it more the unsuccessful, deadbeat type of person, the person never has ever conquered anything in their lives, a person who is, or a person who has a job that probably is not content, doesn't conform, wants better things out of life? Do they benefit more? These groups of people benefit more than someone who's super successful? Who benefits from this?
Actually, everybody. I have clients I work with that make $500,000 a year that feel their life is out of control. I have people that are just simple little lower income class people that I've worked with
Right.
for different reasons. But everybody can be out of sync. Can you be a great success and still kind of be out of sync with yourself? Yes, you can. Like I said, you're not going to literally, you can succeed even though you might not be in sync with yourself as I describe it.
Well, I think that has to do for the kind of the culture makes it seem like the only success is having a bunch of money, right? So
Oh,
the more
no.
money we have, we feel successful. But a lot of people that are rich are not happy,
No,
right?
not at
So
all.
so success has got to be a combination of many factors. The money factor, and not necessarily have to have a lot of money, but to be comfortable in a place you love, family that
Hmm.
you have probably arranged, you know, or fixed issues, or but
Yeah.
you explain to us. You're the expert, so go ahead.
Jader, it's actually about just what life do you want to live?
Right.
That's what success is. I mean, if some people are happy working a job and making $50,000 a year and living in a little house like this and pursuing gardening at their house,
Right.
and they're happy, that's all that counts. So if someone has dreams that they want to travel the world and study the world and work with their laptop and travel around the world and do that, if they're doing it and they're happy doing it,
More
that's
power to
what
them.
counts. I mean, life goes by a lot faster than we really. I mean, we're here, like a vapor, and the only thing that's important is that we understand that we are supposed to live life on our terms.
Great.
And
Go ahead. Go ahead.
but
Finish your thought.
and the reason for that is there's people that we need to help. Jada, there's somebody 10 years from now that's going to come to you that only you're going to be able to help. You're going to be able to give them some advice, but not unless you're living the life the way you want to.
Right.
And this is what we're like. I mean, we have a world out there full of problems, and there's always people that we can help, but we can only help people to the level that we help ourselves. And
Wonderful.
if the more people you can help is by you understanding how that you can live your life the way you want to.
Yeah, you got to be an example for sure.
Yes. And then when you talk to them, you're going to have that understanding to share with them, and it's going to go right to their heart because you understand them.
Right.
So it's more than just us living life. It's about the world that we live in too, and the impact we have while we're here.
Excellent. All right. John, I really want to thank you for the time you spent doing, having this conversation. Very comfortable. You're an easy guy to talk to. You have a
Thank you.
ton of experience, ton of knowledge, wisdom, which is what's important. That's why I reached out to you and I said, hey, let's have a conversation and see how people react to this.
Sure.
Hopefully, we can get some reaction, more than just reaching out, but comments and thoughts and things that people derive from this conversation. John, thank you very much for this time. Let's do a second conversation, and let's have a conversation a little more advanced into uh, the paradigm and
Okay.
the concepts of everything, so you can be a little more detailed
Sure.
on what you talked about. John, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jader.
We'll talk later. Until
All
the
right.
next time. All right.
All right, my friend.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you later.